Wish talking to you today from the National Cybersecurity Center about the CIS controls, account management, and access control. Those are CIS controls number 5 and 6. First, I want to talk just briefly about the CIS controls and the implementation groups. So they just came out with version 8. Only difference between version 7 and version 8 of the controls is their terminology of implementation groups. So instead of having 18 different control groups and telling you to focus on all of them simultaneously, what they did was break down the safeguards or sub-controls, they call them safeguards, into 3 groups, IG1, 2, and 3, where IG1 is their essentials or basic cyber hygiene, and then check those boxes, move on to 2 and 3, but the most bang for your buck right off the bat, if you're just starting a security program, is going to be IG1. So, brief description of account management, using the processes and tools to assign and manage authorization to credentials for accounts, administrator accounts, service accounts, to enterprise assets and software. So this is key here. If you know who has authorization to two different types of assets, that's going to be more access control, but just having a inventory of the accounts that you have and what types that they are is key as well. So why is this control critical for account management? It's much easier for any type of threat to gain access if they have credentials versus trying to hack their way through the environment. Second is that if you have privileged accounts and more privileged accounts, that's a larger attack surface for any type of criminal or threat, and they're more likely to do some type of damage with a privileged account versus a user account that has very little access to the system. So looking through the controls here, or the safeguards in implementation group 1, inventory of accounts. That's step number 1. If you look at these controls here, or safeguards, at the column that says security function, you can see the NIST cybersecurity framework, identify, detect, protect, respond, recover, those labels there. So identify as 5.1, unique passwords, disable dormant accounts, restrict privileges to administrator accounts. These are some simple things that put into place make a big difference. Implementation group 2, 2 controls here, establishing and maintaining an inventory of service accounts. So service accounts, administrator accounts are a little bit different, so this is just a separate task here. And then centralizing account management through some type of tool. There's no IG3 for this control. So big key concepts here, strong passwords and account activity logging and monitoring. So you want to know what is going on within your accounts and making sure that you know what accounts you have out there. It's like having keys to your house, printing a bunch of them, but not knowing where all of those keys are would be a failure of account management here. Access control, very closely related to account management. So you're using processes and tools to create, assign, manage, revoke access credentials and privileges for all different types of accounts. So essentially, you have the inventorying, and now you have managing the access for all of your accounts here. Why is this control critical? Well, each of your accounts need a different level of access based on what that person's job responsibilities are. You don't want to give everyone access to everything. So we have a concept I'll talk about in a second called least privilege, only giving access to the users for the data or the assets that they need for their role and nothing more. So when you, like I was mentioning before, if you have a lot of privileged accounts, that's just greater risk exposure for your organization. If every account is a privileged user, then it doesn't matter which account credentials an attacker gets, they're going to have the same level of control to your system regardless. So managing who has different types of access, very important there. Implementation groups here for access control management, obviously granting and revoking access, multi-factor authentication for all types of access, key concepts there, all under the protect NIST CSF function. And then IG2 here, 2 steps or 2 safeguards, an inventory of the authentication and authorization systems and centralizing this function. And then implementation group 3, this is going to be using role-based access control. So when you have different roles or job functions within your organization, if you're able to organize your entire organization into different roles and job functions, and you're able to assign people to a role, those roles have privileges. It's much easier to manage everybody instead of assigning privileges to each user individually. So going back to key concepts, least privilege, only giving someone access that they need to do their job and nothing more. MFA or multi-factor authentication, making sure that there's 2 authentication points to gain access to a system, making sure that when an employee leaves or a contractor is done with their work, you deprovision that account. Something left open after, let's say, an employee is frustrated and quits and they still have access to your system, that's someone who's likely to could potentially act negatively or act with malintent against your system if they still have access. And if someone needs privileged access to certain data, certain systems, they should have multiple accounts, only using the privileged account when it's needed and using their regular user account on other instances.